Yo, what's up, YouTube? It's International Master Irina Rensch coming at you from Chess.com's YouTube channel, and this is the US Chess League highlights from Week 1. We're going to try to bring you a video highlighting some of our favorite games, some of the top picks as far as we're concerned. It's kind of a subjective opinion, but hey, you're going to love it anyway because it's chess and it's highlighting the US Chess League. And this particular game slipped under the radar as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the Week 1 nominations, Black here being the legend as far as the U.S. Chess League goes, Julio. You can see a picture of him right there. He was playing Mr. Mo of the Carolina Cobras, and Julio had played a fantastic game on the black side of a Spanish to reach a position where black is essentially playing for two results. After playing a4, there's a plan to bring the knight from b7 to a5 to really increase pressure to the b3 pawn. Now you say, wait a second, Danny, that's not enough. Well, guess what? There's also an idea of eventually relocating this pony to d4. If that position is established, you might find white having a hard time dealing with the pressure, and collapsing under the pressure by capturing may weaken the pawn on c4 to long-term targets. Taking on d4 might allow me to capture one way or the other and open up an avenue for the king. Not necessarily claiming that white is losing here, but definitely claiming that Julio, with the black pieces, had really brought the pressure, brought the funk, and now the noise is in white's face as far as how he wants to deal with this threat after a4. And usually when the noise gets in your face, you get distracted and you're like, where'd the noise come from? So you make a blunder. You play knight f1. That's what people do when they're in bad positions. And Julio brought down the gauntlet, did not miss his chance with this delicious move, knight d takes c4. B takes c4, knight takes c4. And all of a sudden, after the move knight a3, it becomes pretty clear that Julio was playing for two results. White would be begging here pretty soon to give back some of his material if he could stop the gauntlet of pawns that will be rushing toward the queening squares. So This game really was a stellar performance from Julio as black, pushing the pawns and achieving this position on the queen side that eventually led to a blunder from his opponent and a massive breakthrough. We're going to go ahead and see how he played it out, but after b3, it's pretty obvious that too many threats, not enough time for white. Knight to d2 holds off the b1 square, but giving back one piece is not enough to get both pawns, and within a few moves, it became clear to white that the pawns on the queen side, at least the c-pawn, would not and could not be stopped, at least not in time to prevent black from making an infiltration into the king's side. So a stellar performance from Mr. Becerra, the legend in the U.S. Chess League, a two-time MVP, if my brother at Samson Joshua on Twitter is not wrong in that fact, although be careful, don't trust his facts. He also says that the U.S. Chess League commissioner slays vampires in his spare time, so weird. Let's move on. The next game I chose is one from one of my favorite players in the league, one of my favorite chess players in general, Thunderholt playing white against Var Akobian. What was set up to be maybe one of the highlight and one of the most intense matchups of the night didn't go so well for the black pieces here when Var made a blunder after the move knight d5. Should be noted, though, that this position is not an easy one for black to deal with already. As we learn in chess, blunders are usually made when someone's already worse. Given the fact that the captures on c4 will, if everything gets traded, lead to nothing but a dominant position for the white queen with a strong pony and the d-file, and that's when black will probably come under too much pressure on the queen side to hold in the long run. Looks like white's pieces are going to be pretty happy to hold those squares. So knight to d5 was played, and I think Var probably calculated variations that involved e4, knight b4 with tempo, and maybe black has enough time to deal with this threat of knight to b6. Though the shocker came through here when Holt stole a page out of Kamsky's book from the Mamedyarov game and took with the rook on d5, surprising the world. After bishop takes d5, knight b6, it became pretty clear that black wasn't going to be able to hold the fort down, not because I'm taking the rook on a8, but because I'm taking on d5. Noted should be that rook takes d5 fails to bishop c4. When defending with the rook would allow e4, whilst moving the king would actually allow me to just take and shake and bake, and I helped. So not really an option for black to take on d5. Tried to defend with bishop f8, but two pieces for the rook and complete domination over a particular set of a square complex like the light squares is really all you need at a level like this where Holt and Akobian are playing on, and only a few more moves were played till we got an endgame up a piece, and Akobian basically did the old play out a few more moves because I'm so frustrated with myself I can't walk away yet. And so, unfortunately, not the best game for Var. I'm sure we'll see a lot of great performances for him, but the tactic of rook takes d5 was certainly worth seeing. And it wasn't until the queens came off the board that, or the board, excuse me, that VAR threw in the towel. So let's go ahead and move on to another fun one. One of my favorite games of the night came at us live from Korba and Bannock, and ended up being actually Commissioner Greg Shahad's nominee for Game of the Week. But this particular game was exciting for me to watch, given the fact that I'm an English attack by nature player as white, and watching black, also a Sicilian player as black. So watching this game develop and watching white's pawn storm slowly go from what I considered a slight advantage to the middle game to way too many pawns being pushed without enough time. One of the traps that players can fall into in the English attack, looking at all these pawns and thinking they look really cute, but not actually possessing any firepower as far as creating threats. And that position led to a beautiful finish here by Mr. Bannock as black, starting with the move knight a3 check. Whole point is that the knight is poisoned. To capture it would open the b file, and the b file would lead to mate here not too long after that. But after king a1, knight takes c2, knight takes c2, bishop takes c2, it wasn't getting much better, and this was a really exciting finish after rook d f1 b3. Noted should be that if white played a3 here, it might have taken a little more work for black. An idea like rook to b5 and rook over to a5 is a little bit too slow when you consider moves like queen to f2 coming, followed by a potential capture on g7. So you could note, actually, despite the fancy finish that took place, that black's best approach might have been something that involved rook b5 right away, with the idea that rook a5, rook takes a2 is very hard to stop, even under the pressure and face of something like queen f2, rook a5. What's amazing is that this capture here doesn't necessarily take away the almost impossible threat to stop of rook takes a2. So I was analyzing the game in my head while it took place, and I think rook b5 might have been a little more accurate. But after b3, and white did not come up with the correct move with b3, choosing to play the move queen f2, black has a knockout blow to boot here. If you want to pause the video, I'll go ahead and slow it down. 3, 2, 1. If you haven't found black's move, that's a U problem. Queen a3 smashes through in style. B takes a3 is maybe not the best choice for white, but white doesn't really have a lot of choices either. So certainly the finish here makes us understand why Mr. Shahadi chose it as his favorite game. But we're going to move on and see a couple more examples of the games that were the GOTW nominees this week. And let's start with the game between Irina Krush and Boris Gulko. Now, we skip past an interesting sort of old Indian opening here between these two very strong, very well-known American chess players to get this critical position here where the computer at first suggested maybe black should be looking to play a move like g5 based on lines like capturing f6, I take everything on e1 and then take on f4, and the position is good for black considering that both the knight and bishop are hanging at the end of a line like that. But I understand Mr. Gulko not wanting to go with an approach like this, even if for nothing else, without going into it too deeply, just retreating the bishop suggests to us that a position like this with the pawns overextended and white's king coming under pressure for the rest of the game may not be high on your list. Not to mention the fact that once you start calculating the more interesting approach here for black, I definitely fell in love with it, and I was super excited to see Boris go for it after d takes c5, bishop takes, just gives up the queen, just says, I don't want a piece, the whole thing. And though I guess in a practical, or let's say a non-practical sense, the computer may like white here, and everybody loves themselves a queen, right? Let's be honest. But the truth is, one of the things you can do when highlighting an unbalanced material position, which is one where the points roughly equal the same amount, but both sides have different types of pieces, like 2 rooks for the queen, maybe 3 minors for the queen, a rook and a minor and a couple pawns for the queen. These are all positions I would actually classify under this unbalanced material theme. And there are 2 pieces of criteria you always take into consideration when evaluating those positions. Number 1, king safety. Who has the ability to create more threats against the enemy king? And in this case, it's black, because white doesn't have great protection of the king. The king is not particularly, not super weak, but definitely if white could even make a 1 pawn move to go backwards with a move like h2, Irina would probably make a move like this to solidify the king side and take away some of black's threats. And the other thing you consider is pawn weaknesses. So king safety and pawn weaknesses, and both of those in this type of position do favor black. When you add that to the practical aspect that white is currently playing with pieces that are slightly misplaced, definitely not on their best squares, it really became an interesting thing for black to go for this. So whether unbiasedly this is really the best approach for black, this is why I nominated this game for Game of the Week. I just thought it was a super interesting idea to sack the queen and a well-timed approach to try to take advantage of white, given some of the factors I pointed out, like the pawn structure, like the king, and like potentially white's misplaced pieces. So hopefully you can take some of those pieces of advice. We all want to learn from these US Chess League games, right? We don't just want to hear about how the strong players play. We want to learn from how they play. Thanks for watching this US Chess League highlights video here on our YouTube channel. You can click here to see the full version of this video unedited over on Chess.com for our premium members, so go ahead and check that out. Also, make sure you follow the US Chess League on Tuesday and Wednesday nights over on Chess.com. And you can sign up for Chess.com here by clicking this bubble and start playing games for free. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you around on the main site.